Hi beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing another review for Married at First Sight. This is going to be for season 15, episode 15. And I believe the episode was called Are You My Person? Alright, so I think this is really special. This is episode 15 for season 15, and I think we are 2 more episodes out from the final decision day. So now is a really good time to start making your predictions. I would love it if you guys include your predictions down below in the description box. And let's really make this special because this is going to be my final season of Married at First Sight. Well, I feel like it is going to be my final season of Married at First Sight. And so I want to make the most of this. Like, let's partake in the discussions. And if you guys have anything or have any topics you want to talk about, then please mention whatever your notes or your comments are down below. Also, please check out the new series that I've just created. It's called Worthy, Flirty, and Thriving. So this is a new series I felt inspired to create. I wanted to do something where I could give back to people, just sharing my experience and what is my experience? How did I learn how to process my emotions? How did I learn how to overcome my fears? How did I learn how to pursue things that were more in alignment with who I really am? And how did I learn how to use my feminine energy to my benefit? Okay. So let's go ahead and start with our first couple, which is going to be Lindy and Miguel. So this week I would have to say both good things and pros and cons to share about each couple. I feel like each couple, genuinely, they're all trying to work through things. They're all trying to work through things. They're all human. They're all trying to figure it out. They're all trying to put in genuine effort. But there are also the things where they keep hitting walls, and we're going to talk about those things. So starting with Lindy and Miguel, starting out with the episode, Lindy was having the discussion with her teammates. Miguel was having the discussion with his teammates about their argument and their disagreement. Miguel, during the after party, mentioned and specified that he was having a bad mental health moment and weekend, and I absolutely could feel that. His energy felt a little bit on the depressing end. He's so in his emotions. That's usually why people don't have so much grace, right? That Lindy was asking for. They don't have as much grace because they don't have it for themselves. So people can't give what they don't have. The main issue I feel like between Lindy and Miguel is that they keep missing each other, and they're going to need a lot more give. So Lindy kept talking or essentially accusing Miguel of, being too controlling, which he has been. It is also coming from a place of fear, and Lindy's issue is that she overreacts, and then she calls it nothing, right? She overreacts, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's just normal for me." So both of those things are not good. For one, we don't want to normalize dysfunction. It isn't normal to be in a reactive state and crying like that all the time. That sounds extremely draining. She's right as when she refers to it being a hiccup. People go through hiccups, they go through ups and downs. This process accelerates the emotions, it accelerates everything. So people are going through things much sooner in their marriage or in their connection versus if they were to, have courted each other and then go through I don't want to say a real marriage, it is a real marriage, but if they had that extra time to get to know one another, it would have been a much different process. But I just can't help but feel that it doesn't seem right to normalize dysfunction, to normalize disagreeing to that degree. She said it was the worst weekend. She cried her tears out and she's like, "Oh, this is just what we go through." And I'm like, no, this is actually, to me, this is the height, because it's the height of emotions. What Miguel is essentially saying is that this is the threshold of maximum emotion. He's maxed out on the emotion reactivity. And she still seems to partake in, being very reactive. She still seems to partake in being very reactive. And so she doesn't see that it's not abnormal. So the first thing that she was saying in the opening scene is that I'm not going to bow to this man. He's going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to work this out. Now, the minute you start saying you have to bow down to your partner, there's a huge power dynamic at play here. And when I was hearing her say that, I could literally picture father-daughter energy, right? The father-daughter dynamic is most definitely where I personally learned the shift of power. Understanding how can we as human beings respect each other, because the masculine energy is all about creating structure and discipline, right? And she's saying, I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. And the thing is, I think they're almost bringing the worst out of each other in a sense, which is great because then you get to really know your weaknesses. Because I don't think he wants to be controlling. It's just that she insists on being reactive as opposed to emotional control, which I pointed to in like my first 5 reviews. This is why as a woman, it's your job to figure out how to maintain emotional control because you hold more of the emotional, energetic weight in your relationship. So if you have no emotional control, he's going to start getting more controlling. Now, if you have emotional control and he's starting to be more controlling, yes, there's a reason to be concerned. But you also have to understand that men have natural instinctive responses as well. And it's actually, in a way, it's very natural and healthy for him want control. If you think about like a child or a teenager who's having like a really rebellious stage, which is what Lindy is expressing and what she's going through in reaction to her repressive religious background. A child or a teenager, their emotions are up and down, and their parents starts putting down restrictions, putting down rules to reinforce discipline, to reinforce the importance of emotional control. But the way that you teach your child emotional control ideally is through example. But that is what happens. You know, teenagers, they're going through those hormonal ups and downs. You have to reinforce those rules. You have to stand strong. It's like a tough fight sometimes with teenagers, but it has to happen. And I had that with my parents. And I've heard, I've seen it's just a repetitive pattern that we're here to experience. And it's a dynamic that's playing out between Lindy and Miguel in the relationship. So it's not me against him. He's trying to control me. I can't be controlled. It's just understand, I think it's understand to see both perspectives, to understand that you're playing a part in his reaction to wanting to control you. You're playing a part in it. But he also needs self-awareness to know that him trying to overly control you isn't really helping the situation either, right? You need your space. You need to move about. You need to react. So I don't really care for her normalizing dysfunction because it is dysfunction. It is not normal to experience those heights of emotion. That becomes extremely draining to the nervous system. It becomes extremely draining in a relationship to the point where you just don't want to partake anymore. And so he's actually starting to showcase like this detachment, right? Because now he's just like, okay, this is too much. Because she just gets up and 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 up. So that's the Jekyll and Hyde that she's playing out. She gets on this up and up with her emotions and she's not really taming it. She's not really pulling it down. She needs to do that for herself. But him trying to control her isn't going to help the situation. What I think Lindy and Miguel are doing well, when Lindy is on her good side, I like that. She can be actually really endearing and very optimistic and sweet and cute and very supportive. And that's what he's listening to. That's what's pulling him in. That's what's making him fall in love with her. That's what's making him want to give her health insurance. That's what's making him want to commit. But ultimately, I think Miguel is in tune with his emotions to know that she emotionally overwhelms him. Moving forward, I think the two of them, I don't really see them being able to stay together because they still have to cultivate tools. When people say love, I understand it is love. It's like a first level of love. Right? But you need like 5 levels of love to really want to stay committed to one another, to really want to see it through. So I feel like Miguel's at level 1 of love. He really cares for her. He really enjoys her, yet at the same time, not enough to want forever, right? Not enough to want forever commitment. I like that Lindy reinforces the importance of divorce isn't an option. I like that she reinforces that. She has a very set mindset when it comes to what she wants. And I really like that because you're going to need that to pull through, your ups and downs in a connection. Is it an absolutely no for them? Not necessarily. I think with additional counseling or therapy, couple therapy or couple counseling, the two of them can find a way to thrive because they do like to have those discussions. But just remember that just talking it out isn't going to resolve it. You need to embody it. And I feel like her embodying and some more emotional control is going to significantly transform her relationship. So at whichever point she understands that she plays a huge part in him wanting to control her, then that would be great. For Miguel, there is some kind of like unresolved emotional issues there I'm picking up with the mental health and him I almost want to feel like this is like a pattern, right? where it's like when he gets to that point where he just can't take anymore, he falls into this like past self that is discouraged, disappointed, depressed, very negative, very mean. We all have this part of ourselves where we fall into these like patterns, our old ways of behaving. And I feel like for him, that's what he's exemplifying. It's like falling back into this old pattern. I feel like that's the old him. I feel like that's not who he wants to be. But this is what he's falling into as I almost want to say like a fail safe. It's like a part of him that's always been there, but it's like all of these insecurities are activating this past negative version of himself that's coming up to the surface. So I feel like he's just needing to understand and delve deep into sifting through why he feels these emotions, why he gets so discouraged and so negative, as opposed to being proactive or, hitting the pause button. Like I mentioned in my previous review, like hit the pause button when you start to spiral negatively inward in that way. She's spiraling, but she's taking him along with her. So I'm like, that's just the thing. I'm like, you want to spiral, you want to be reactive, but you're taking your partner with you. They're going to spiral with you, unfortunately. So it's not really fair to a partner for you to have to spiral with them, around them all the time. The last thing I want to address is that Lindy was going off on Miguel with her friend, right? She was venting and then she was crying. So she has these like moments where she's just crying, it's dramatic, and she bursts into tears. And you know what that took me back to? That took me back to when I was in college and I kept having these breakdowns because I was so stressed. And that was when probably my mental health was the most fragile. But I also realized that I couldn't keep living my life like that. And that was probably the worst it had ever been. That was about 5 years ago, the worst it had ever been. And I kept spiraling, I kept having breakdowns, and I knew that that wasn't something I had to continue on. That's the difference, I feel like, between, what Lindy's portraying and what I feel like she has the potential to create for herself is that's not normal. If you're breaking down all the time, if you're fighting all the time like this, there is something majorly under the surface that needs to be resolved. And between the two of them, there's a lot of I'm getting mental health, tune to your emotions, tune to your emotional control, find a way to process your emotions, find a way to process your frustration, right? She wants to be all expressive with her words, but unfortunately expressing your negativity just attracts that to you. Right? So that's the thing about if you want to go out there and you want to say things out into the world and you want to be negative, unfortunately that energy is going to come back to you. Especially when you're around your partner, and especially if you're the feminine energy carrying the emotional weight in the relationship, you're going to cause him to, rift. I don't know why that's the word I want to use, rift with you and be a part of that maddening experience with you. It's not fun. All in all, I think they get along when it comes to liking each other. There's a genuine chemistry between the two of them. I think both of them have traits that they can benefit from one another, but they're also feeding off of the negativity between each other as well. Okay, that's Lindy and Miguel. I feel like they will say yes at decision day, but when it comes to forever marriage, I don't know. So moving on to Alexis and Justin. So the main thing that came through for Alexis and Justin, what was coming through for them, is that Justin decided to get rid of Maya. He's decided to give his dog to his best friend in support of his marriage with Alexis. Alexis and Justin, they seem to enjoy one another. They seem to enjoy each other's presence. They really Justin is a yes for me. He likes her. He enjoys her presence. He's attracted to her. It's a yes. In spite of the difficulty, in spite of going through downs, he's still committed. And I'm like, that's fantastic. That's, genuinely the kind of partner you're looking for, versus Miguel, who's kind of on the fence. He's undecided. Because why is someone undecided? Why are they not committed? Yes, there's the fear, but it's because they're also expressing they don't have, they need to build more resilience within themselves to be able to sustain a long-term partnership. And Miguel's really seeing do I really have what it takes for this partnership? So Alexis, I don't know, I think Alexis said some really interesting things in this episode. She mentioned how her and Justin, she's like, am I willing to tolerate, she caught herself saying that she was tolerating his behavior, and that made her reflect and think about, am I actually committed to this or not? A lot of people on the internet are saying she isn't. I am not feeling her commitment is the same as Justin's for sure. He's definitely a lot more committed, but I wasn't in support of Justin expressing how, because he got rid of Maya, that meant that she had to say yes and commit. I understand that he needs he wants the affirmation from her, but it's still her decision to not give that affirmation to you. You know, to some degree, because you guys have only known each other for 8 weeks, or by the time it's over, or decision day comes up, you are still strangers. And she's really considering, like she said, I like how she said, I'm thinking generationally, do I want this for my kids? And I feel like that's how all people should think. If you want kids, or just in general, even if you don't want kids, you can still use that thought to think about, is this the right partner for me? Because in the moment you're like, I'm attracted. There are a lot of people who get into relationships, and then once they have kids, they start to see, whoa, this person isn't responsible or stable enough for a family or for kids. And they start to realize, not only are they not stable enough for kids, they're not stable enough for me. And so, yeah, that's usually a huge clue. If you put kids into the equation, it definitely makes things a lot more realistic, and it splashes cold water onto your face to realize, like, what is the truth. So I was really sad that Justin got rid of or let go of Maya. I felt like he shouldn't have had to have done that, but you know, he is committed. I feel like that's very much masculine energy for a man to take action and just say, okay, I will do whatever I have to do to make sure you're comfortable. I think that's really big of him to have made that sacrifice. But I do think he is kind of using it as he's kind of being like a little manipulative with it when he's expecting her to respond a certain way because he let go of his dog. And he's like, but I understand what he needs that reassurance, right? He just really wants that reassurance from her. So a lot of these couples kept, you know, they're like push and pull, right? It's kind of a little bit of a tug of war energy going between the two of them. And all the while, you know, when I'm watching Lindy and Miguel and I'm watching Alexis and Justin, I'm thinking someone needs to give. And that's usually the thing in relationships. It's just like, if we stop thinking of each other as opposite poles, red team versus blue team, and we understand that we're actually all both on the same green team, then we can find a way to just do whatever we need to do to support our team, to support our union. I feel like in some ways she can give him more reassurance, but I would also be very direct in expressing or even letting him know, because I'm like, he let go of his dog. If you're not sure, if you really don't know, I would have expressed to him, honestly, keep your dog, because I honestly don't know if we really have what it takes, because I wouldn't even go as far as to not, you know, to tell him to let go of his dog. To me, that's way too far. That's way too far if you guys are undecided. So the minute she's not giving him the reassurance that he wanted, in a text message, by the way, he texted her. He's like, oh, I've made my decision. And he said, I took emotions out of the equation. It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like you took emotions out of the equation. I understand that maybe you're becoming more aware of like, oh, I'm more committed than she is. That's great. Maybe you were overly emotional. But I also don't think it's good to take emotions out of the equation. I think it's important to use your emotions to kind of guide you to some degree. Like you want to use do you feel good or do you not feel good? That's important. Don't just be like, oh, you know, we can't just be calculative about relationships, because relationships are like 90% emotion. Let's be honest. It's like 90% of an emotional commitment, how we feel. If we're not happy in a connection or relationship, why do people get a divorce? Is it because they're happy? I don't think so. So emotion always plays a part in it, and it should play a part. But don't let it blind you. Don't let it overwhelm you or overwhelm your decision-making process. Take all things into equation. All things. How you feel in this person's presence, how you feel about this, how this person responds, but pay attention and look at their actions too. Okay. So that's what I have for Alexis and Justin. Whether they're going to say yes or no, I just feel like Justin, he's back and forth with his emotions. You know, top of the episode, it's a yes. The end of the episode, it's a no. But I think overall, he still wants to really commit. I feel like Alexis has said she wants to commit, but for some reason, the internet and some other people have detected that she's not sincere. I really don't know, and I can't tell at this point. Okay, let's move on to Stasia and Nate. And then there's another couple who's a miss on this equation, which is Mitch and Kristen. Let's talk about Mitch and Kristen really quick. So Mitch and Kristen are trying to figure it out together. The main thing that popped up in this episode was that Mitch wasn't wearing his wedding ring when he had that weekend away with a bunch of women at with the company and saving the environment. I do think Mitch is sincere. He was very honest when he was like, yeah, there were lots of women and we went in the jacuzzi together. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And Kristen is just like, dude, you just don't, you don't just say these things. He's still figuring it out. But out of all the men, or I would say him and Nate are displaying a lot of growth in this show. So I'm really proud of his growth. I'm really proud that he's making the effort. After they got back from the weekend with the other couples, he was like, oh, you were the best part of my trip. So he's understanding that Kristen needs affirmations. She needs those words to hear. She needs to hear from him that I'm beautiful. Like, she says that, and I love that she openly expresses that. I would also like to just emphasize, though, the importance of not feeding your spouse lines or how you want, because I'm like, you're essentially saying you don't really like them. I know we need to communicate our desires and we need to say, oh, this is what would make you feel good. But honestly, I would enjoy so much to see someone's creativity and how they communicate their romance to me. I would openly say, yes, I need more romance, or this is how I perceive romance. Like, when you do this, it makes me feel good. Words of affirmation, ooh, I love that. But I would want that person to be creative with how they come about showcasing that romance. I would not want to feed them lines because then I'm always going to question whether it's sincere or not. And I feel like she's been trying to feed him lines. I think Mitch is a rebel, but at the same time, he's kind of clueless about certain things. So he's like, oh, okay, if I say these words, this is what feels good to Kristen. You're the best part of my day. I miss you. I miss our spending time with you. I miss having coffee with you. You know, it starts to sound a little bit like I feel like he is somewhat sincere, but I also feel like he's just doing it because he knows that's what she likes. Right? And he wants to make sure that she feels that connection in their relationship. But it almost starts to sound like, lines out of a book. Because are they Mitch's words or are they your words, Kristen? And I'm like, are you going to feel and receive the love if it's your words that you fed to him to tell to you? So I'm like, just be very careful of telling someone, this is how I want you to do it. I want you to get me roses, love letters on Tuesdays. Like, then it's just like, what? Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun in that? Let them be creative. Let them show you what romance looks like. Otherwise, you're basically telling them, I don't actually like you. I just like the idea of you, or I like the idea of marriage. So as far as Kristen and Mitch making it long term, I'm not really sure that they have what it takes because they're so different. I think they're both great people. But even Mitch expressed during the after party at that point, in that episode, he was still feeling undecided and still trying to figure things out. And I'm like, it's not really that complicated. If you're feeling that undecided, I feel like you're just not decided, right? The decision isn't a yes. I think that's all I have to say about the two of them. Yeah, I like them as people. I really like them as people. I like how optimistic and supportive Kristen is. But at the same time, if you feel like you have to teach this person how to love you, and I know that that's what marriage is that you do teach. I'm not married, but I'm going to, like, yes, I do know as human beings, we teach each other what love means to us or how we perceive it or how we, if someone shows or does this for us, how we receive love, we teach that person our love language. But at the same time, it almost sounds like she's having to teach him a lot. And it feels kind of frustrating and draining for her. So I just wonder if she's willing to do that continuously throughout their marriage. Are you continuously willing to teach Mitch how to love you? Otherwise, is it exhausting for you? Okay, so let's move on to my chair is like totally crooked. I just realized that. I'm just like, what is this? I was looking in the camera. Okay, our final couple is Stassi and Nate. Stassi and Nate are really cute together. They have like genuine chemistry. They have genuine attraction to one another. I really like their vibes together. The main thing that's coming up is, again, Sasha's control issues. Now, one of the big concerns, or like, one thing that was really obvious is that because of the age gap, and because of the age gap between her and Nate, she's more ready to have kids versus Nate, who's trying to create a convincing argument for why they should put it off. So that's just a mismatch in general as far as lifestyles go. That's where the experts really should have took things into consideration, because a woman or just a person's desire to have kids, it's huge, right? This is their lifestyle. This is what creates fulfillment for them. He just wants to delay it a little bit longer so they have more time to get to know each other and have fun and enjoy what they're doing in life, which I totally get. I think he's 33. For his age, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And because he's a guy, it makes perfect sense. But she's a woman and her body says otherwise, right? Her body is like, I'm ready for kids now. So now we have to find some kind of compromise here to, yeah. So they were both having that conversation about kids, and she was saying that, hey, we can still have kids and have fun. We can still have kids and raise them in my perfect house with white walls and white furniture. And yeah, I really liked that they had that discussion. Nate's biggest insecurity was that, his mom wasn't there, right? His mom wasn't there. Can I be there for these kids? So he has some insecurities about kids. I feel like they should just continue to do counseling or see therapy, keep having open conversations about that, and they will thrive. But another thing that was an issue that was playing out in this episode was that, Stasia's control issues. When she brought him over to her house that she was building, he was talking about how, how can we keep it clean? And then when she brought him to the hardware store to add additional things, she wasn't taking any of his input. She's like, well, this is my house. Well, this is how I want it. Well, this is going to keep you single, girl. It's called teamwork. It's called collaboration. It's called compromise. And it's called marriage. That's the difference between you being single and you being in a marriage. Is you having control over the situation and keeping it your way and vetoing his decisions, is it worth the sacrifice? Is it worth not having a marriage for that? Painting a room a certain color because he likes it, getting a few knobs. I'm like, is it really worth having control over every little detail just for the to sacrifice your entire relationship? I'm like, either you want this relationship or you don't. Right? And he's not asking for her to give him everything. He's just asking for, I want to partake in this and I want us to find some kind of compromise. I feel like Nate is being very realistic. I think Nate perfectly understands what he's getting himself into. That's why he's trying to take it in stride. I appreciate that he's giving it a chance because he genuinely likes her. But this is a self-sabotage behavior. So I just challenge every person to think about, is it worth control? You're like, oh, I get the control, right? Miguel too, right? Oh, I get to control the situation. Is it worth sacrificing your relationship to be controlling of how someone reacts or all of these little details? Is it worth it? So you really need to think long term. Those are some self-sabotaging behaviors that show up in a partnership. Sometimes I'm like, you can have a beautiful, thriving relationship, but so many times people get in the way of being able to create that for themselves because of their fears of little silly things. To me, little silly things like how the furniture in the house looks. I'm like, that's just silly. This is a lifetime partnership. This is essentially a soulmate you're choosing to be with for the rest of your life. And you're telling me you would rather have control over your house. It's at the core, it's a core issue, right? It's a control thing. I feel like it is silly, furniture and all these little things, it's silly. But at the core, it's a control thing for her. She's trying to control the situation or keep certain things in her control. But it doesn't make him feel good, right? Especially as a man coming into a house where a woman, she owns this house. He's wanting to know where is his part in the situation because his natural instinct is to be a provider. Why did he say, I want to make more money so that, we can create this experience together before we, have kids? Because his natural instinct, men's natural instinct is to provide. It's always their natural instinct. If they don't fall into those patterns, it's because there's some unhealed masculine energy that they're needing to resolve. But their natural instinct is to provide. Okay, so if you fight that instinct, if you fight their natural instinct to provide, you're resisting their nature. You're resisting who they are at their core, and it's basically like rejection to them. So that's my final thing about Nate and Stasia. Let me know if you guys have any questions at all available. I'm gonna try to be on top of uploading these videos. I have been doing like more projects, and I've had other things going on lately, so that's why I haven't been posting as quickly. But I appreciate it. And just partake in, again, let me know if you guys have any questions about anything. Other than that, please feel free to check out my new series, Worthy, Flirty, and Thriving. It's my new passion that I have embraced for myself. And I hope you guys have a beautiful day or evening. Like, subscribe to support the channel. Bye.